Alright guys, it's Will back again with another review, and today's review is actually on the Game of Thrones episode entitled The Door that just aired last night. Now this review will be slightly more in depth than most of my non-spoiler movie reviews because this video will serve as both a brief recap and a spoiler-filled review. Yes, you heard me correctly, this review will contain spoilers. So if you haven't seen last night's episode and you don't want it spoiled for you, you should turn back now. Alright, since you're still here, let's get into it. So The Door is the 5th episode of Game of Thrones Season 6, and I gotta say right off the bat that this season has been insanely good so far. It's amazing how the showrunners have juggled so many characters and so many storylines so well. I mean, there are definitely some storylines and characters I care more about than others, but most shows have a couple characters and a few subplots, but nothing near as in-depth as what Game of Thrones is doing right now. So this episode starts with Sansa receiving a letter from Baelish, aka Littlefinger. Sansa then goes and meets up with Baelish to ask him why he left her with Ramsay and whether or not he knew about the monster that Ramsay is. She even explains that she still feels what Ramsay did to her on her wedding night to this very day. Baelish begs Sansa for her forgiveness, and in return Sansa almost considers having Brienne kill him right there. He actually offers Sansa soldiers from House Aaron, but she really wants nothing to do with Baelish at this point. This is a really great scene for me because we're actually finally getting to see Sansa take charge and really be in control of her own destiny. She even did this with Jon a few episodes back when she convinces him that they have to take Winterfell back from the Boltons. So next we get several scenes with Arya in the city of Braavos where she is actually given a name of a person to kill by Jaqen H'ghar. He explains that she has been given a second chance but there will not be a third. Arya eventually goes to scope out the lady she's been assigned to kill, and she gets a front row seat to a comedic play of a couple things, but the main one being Ned Stark's execution. This scene is very well acted by Maisie Williams just by the expressions on her face. I gotta be honest though, I'm starting to care less and less about Arya's storyline because it seems like the same thing over and over. I actually felt this way about Daenerys' storyline as well because it seemed like her progress was just too slow and sort of uninteresting a lot of the time. That's how Arya feels to me right now, but I have a feeling it will pick up the intensity and pace pretty soon. Either way, Jaqen H'ghar explains to Arya once again that the faceless men, servants of the many-faced god, do not ask questions, they serve. So next we're back with Bran and the Three-Eyed Raven, and we get a big reveal here. We see a man strapped to a tree get some sort of shard placed in his chest at the hands of the Children of the Forest. We're then told that this process creates what we now know as the White Walkers, and the Children of the Forest did this to protect themselves from man. This is a huge reveal, and while it did feel sort of out of the blue, it's really important information that in a way explains the backstory of the White Walkers, and more specifically the Night's King. I've seen some people say there was no build-up for this reveal and it wasn't totally effective, but I actually really liked it. I just feel better now that I know the origin of the White Walkers, or others as they're known in the books. Alright, so next we find ourselves at a very important scene in the Iron Islands, and that's the King's Moot. Basically, the King's Moot is where people who believe they have a case to rule the Iron Islands make their case, and the people choose their next king to rule. So Yara puts her name in for consideration and argues her case to a little bit of success, but definitely some resistance as well. Theon then voices his support of Yara and tells everyone that she should be the queen because she is most fit to rule. This is huge for Yara because this lets her know that her brother is back and she can now trust him again. Euron comes in and then argues his case for the right to rule and actually wins over the crowd. Euron is then chosen as the ruler and undergoes a ceremony where they basically drown him to see if he survives. Supposedly this is a salt throne ritual. Well, he does survive, and his first act as king was going to be to kill Theon and Yara, but lo and behold, they already sailed off with most of the fleet to escape Euron's grasp. I'm assuming they're going to head in Daenerys' direction so that they can get to her before Euron does, because that's something that Euron bragged about, saying he was going to wed Khaleesi and then rule Westeros with her. But not having a home is new for Yara, but it's not new for Theon. Theon originally lived in the Iron Islands, then he lived with the Starks, then he was captured by Ramsay, and now he has to flee the Iron Islands again to God knows where. Theon did do some bad things for a small time, but he's really had a tough time in Westeros. You can't help but feel bad for the guy. Then we get a very emotional scene where Jorah reveals his grayscale to Daenerys. Jorah tells her that he's always loved her in this really emotional scene, and she tells him that she commands him to find a cure and return to her as soon as possible. This scene is very emotional because she's banished him twice and he's come back twice because he loves her and wants to prove that he's loyal to her. Daenerys tells Jorah that she needs him by her side when she takes the Seven Kingdoms, and this scene is acted beautifully by both Emilia Clarke and Ian Glenn. After last week's episode, I really care about Daenerys' storyline again. And then we get our first look at the show's second Red Woman, follower of the Lord of Light. She informs Varys and Tyrion that she will spread word of Daenerys as the prince that was promised to gain support. The biggest takeaway from this scene for me is that someone finally got the best of Varys. You can see the disbelief and confusion on his face when the Red Priestess recounts exactly what happened when he had his, man parts removed by a sorcerer, and most importantly, the words he heard in the fire that night. Alright, so now we're at the grand finale of scenes for this episode, and it starts when Bran decides to jump into a vision without the three-eyed raven and gets a sneak peek at the White Walker army as well as the Night's King. The Night's King actually spots Bran in the vision and grabs him, leaving his mark on him, which I still don't know how he's able to touch him or even see him in these visions, and that's gonna have to be explained at some point, I think. And I'm guessing the Night's King comes after Bran because he knows Bran is powerful and he doesn't want people going back into the past and seeing the history of the White Walkers and how to defeat them. So the three-eyed raven tells him that the time has come for Bran to become him and they must leave ASAP before the Night's King gets to him. This scene really accelerates quite quickly, but I really loved how it got started. But then we get sort of a cutaway scene where the result is Jon Snow's party, including Sansa, Davos, Melisandre, Brienne, etc., leaving the wall and beginning to head out for a recruitment of northern houses to fight the Boltons. So that's going to be exciting to watch. But back to the good part. So the White Walkers show up and find their way inside the three-eyed raven's fortress of sorts, and they eventually kill Summer, Bran's direwolf. I was actually really upset when this happened because I, like most people, love the Stark wolves and they just seem to be dropping like flies. There's only like 2 left alive at this point, I think. Ghost, Jon's direwolf, being the main one that most people know. But now the biggest moment of this episode. Bran and the three-eyed raven are in a vision with young Hodor, or Willis, which is his real name. The White Walkers converge on the hut and Mira Reed speaks to Bran in the vision and tells him that he needs to warg into Hodor so that they can leave. Problem is that warging into someone within a vision has drastically negative effects on the person you warg into. Bran wargs into Hodor within the vision and young Willis begins to freak out and starts flailing around on the ground. At this point, I'm just like, holy shit, this is how Willis becomes Hodor. This is just madness on the screen right now. The three-eyed raven then gets killed by a White Walker and Bran is forced to retreat with Mira while Mira tells Hodor, hold the door. And at that moment, I was like, holy shit, hold the door, Hodor. Then we actually get to see young Hodor screaming, hold the door, and his mother frantically trying to help him. This is extremely sad because you see that Bran basically ruined this dude's entire life. Willis seems like he had a bright future ahead of him and a good life, but his life was entirely derailed by future Bran warging into young Willis's mind. Then we cut back to present time while Hodor holds the door and the music builds as the White Walkers tear him to shreds and stab him. I didn't shed a single man tear like some of my friends did, but man, I was close. Hodor's death might have been the saddest death not only that I've seen in Game of Thrones, but maybe ever. It's definitely up there. To see young Willis flailing on the ground screaming hold the door and then Hodor is just incredibly sad. But this episode as a whole was absolutely amazing and is just another great episode in what's been a great season so far. The first third of the episode or so was kind of slow and not the greatest, but the last 2/3 was absolutely amazing. This season, in my opinion, is the best one yet, and it's really so difficult for me to wait 7 days until the next episode airs. I'm gonna say this is the best episode of the season thus far, just barely edging out episode 2 where Jon is revived. This episode gets a 10 out of 10 from me for all the reasons I've laid out in this video. So did you guys see this episode yet? What did you think of it? And if not, you probably shouldn't be watching this video. Either way, drop me a comment and let me know your thoughts on the episode and this season as a whole. And as always, if you like this video, make sure to drop me a like and subscribe to my channel for future content like this. That's all for now. This is Will Foxification signing off.